Hello, everybody. I'm Deb Coviello, the Drop-In CEO, and I want to thank you for dropping in on the Drop-In CEO podcast. And this week we are live. We are live with Ben Baker, and I am so grateful that you have joined us where week after week I bring the most amazing leaders who share their insights with you. And as always, I hope they inspire you. And I do this, and we do this amazing content for you because we sincerely care about partnering with those C-suite leaders to help them navigate challenges and opportunities with confidence. And as you can see, I am joined by Ben Baker this week. We go back a bit, but just a bit about him. He is so focused on communication and providing value in organizations. And he
hmm
finds that sometimes communication can be quite challenging, but it is the key. It is the key to success and longevity and sustainability of those organizations. He has so much experience over a quarter century. Hate to claim that, but he is
I
just
started
so.
when I was 10. It's fine.
But we are going to just jump right in here. And Ben, I just want to say thank you for joining me again on the podcast.
Deb, it is always a lot of fun for us to have a conversation, whether it's, on air or off, we always have a good conversation. So this is going to be fun. Let's get at it.
Yeah. And for two of us that are talkers, are we going to be who's going to talk more? Who? But anyway, it's wonderful. So for those of you who know Ben, he is somebody that showed up in my ecosystem early into my entrepreneurial journey. He has been such a gracious person. I've been on his podcast. He's been on mine. We have done some collaboration and put content. We really care about organizations to be able to have happy employees, retain employees, and also equip leaders with the tools they need. But before we get into what Ben does, it's funny, we know each other for a really long time, but I haven't really dug that deeply into some of the personal things about him. So we're just going to kind of get into this here, and everybody else gets to listen and watch. But, I found it quite interesting on your website. You really talk about where you live in
Yeah.
Canada, and that it's just a special place. Tell me more about that and why it's so special.
Well, as I say on my website, or I used to say on my website, I can't remember if it's on the new one or not. We are in what was once upon a time. We were in Storybrooke. I live in Steveston, BC, and for years we were known as Storybrooke. In fact, you can still see Storybrooke memorabilia there. I mean, it's hysterical because that show's been off the air for years, but we still have that legacy. Steveston is the fishing village in the southeast, no, southwest corner of Vancouver. It's a wonderful place. I live 8 minutes from the docks. I can walk to the dock. I can pick up some fresh salmon. I can walk home and put it on the barbecue. Yeah, so it's a wonderful place to grow up. It's a wonderful place to live, and it's one of those places where neighbors actually know each other, and we actually get together on a regular basis, and and talk and have lunch and dinners and go out to eat together and have coffee. It's a real community. So it's a wonderful place, and I've been lucky to be part of this community for 22, 23 years now, and I don't see us leaving anytime soon.
It's wonderful when you have that kind of community. And again, it depends on where you live. You're so fortunate to live where you're at. I remember when I lived in New Jersey, the culture there was, you talking to your neighbor on a Friday afternoon, you say, "Hey, I'm hungry. I got some steaks. Okay, great. I got some beers. Let's get together and let's, pull up a bunch of chairs."
Yeah,
I go to another part of the country and people are friendly. They wave. You get the cookies when you first move in. But I had a group gathering. I said, "Hey, it's kind of quiet. Maybe let's just have a party with the neighbors."
right.
And I remember gathering, and one neighbor leaned over the table and shook hands and said, "Hello, I'm such and such." They didn't know each other. And so it's interesting how communities do and do not form.
Well, before I lived here, I lived 10 miles away. Okay. Still in Richmond, 10 miles away, in a townhouse development.
Okay.
We knew one of our neighbors. Actually, we knew two of our neighbors. And I sat on the strata council. 95% of the people drove into the complex, opened up their garage doors, drove in, closed their garage doors, and went home. You never saw them. You never talked to them. You had no idea what they looked like. You had no idea if they had kids, what age their kids were, whether business they were in, you know, it was not really conducive to being part of a neighborhood. Where we are right now, we have a block party once a year. We literally close off the street, and we set up tables on the street, and we have games, and everybody brings food, and we get to know each other, and that happens at least once a year. And the neighbors, there's groups of us that all go and have dinners at each other's homes. So it's a completely different feeling depending on what your neighborhood is and the culture of the place you live in.
It's a beautiful thing. And again, when I think about, again, I'm about business and leadership, et cetera, but I
Yeah.
too have also come to a place where community is important, culture is
Mm-hmm.
important. Sometimes that is more important than the actual work that we do. So I'm thinking about my listeners out there. Actually, I was just talking to somebody where she's all work, work, work. And I asked people, we only have a short time on this earth. What kind of balance, what kind of life do you have? Certainly, we want to do good work for society, but gosh
Yeah.
darn it, do you have a neighborhood? Do you have community? Do you have people that you connect with on a regular basis?
Yeah. And I think it's so important to have people, I mean, the world has changed. We're not what we were 30 years ago or what we were 50 years ago. People are far more connected and disconnected at the same time. I've been at restaurants where I'm watching four people around a table eating, and they're all sitting there on their phones, texting at the same time. They might be texting each other for all I know, and not a word comes out of these people for 2 hours as they sit there and eat a meal together. And I sit there and I go, I never want that. I'm a firm believer of we need to be human and we need to be humane. And I think that's always been important to me, and I probably always will be.
I agree with you. And well, I'd like everybody out there just to think and pause on that note. Do you have those meaningful connections with the neighborhood or even your family? And if not, what are you going to do differently? Here's another thing, Ben. Again, we've known each other, and you talk again about you like to do a lot in your community. You do a
Yeah.
lot of volunteering, and I honestly don't know what organizations you're associated with and what gives you joy. So tell me more about that.
Well, for years, I'm not part of it now, but when my son was younger, we have something called the Salmon Festival that happens every year. Now, the Salmon
Wow.
Festival is on Canada Day. So in Canada, that's July 1st. It's like July 4th, in the States, but in Canada, it's July 1st is our Confederation Day. And we get 75 or 85,000 people that
Oh my
descend
God.
into our little village.
Wow.
And we have a parade, and we have food booths, and we have kids games, and we have a trade show, and there's live music and stuff like that. And I ran the trade show for years and years, 7, 8, 10 years. I ran the trade show, and it was fun because you got to meet all the businesses in the neighborhood, and all the businesses in Richmond that wanted to be part of this. And and you brought people into the neighborhood, and you stirred the economy, and people got to eat, and they got to drink, and they got to go and see live music and all that. And it was an entire day, and it was
Yeah.
a lot of fun. But it was probably 10 months of planning
For one day.
in terms of pre-planning and post-planning,
Uh-huh.
to make that one day happen. And it's incredible. I think we've been going on for 75 or 80 years now. This has been going on. And the
Wow.
only 2 years that I think that it never happened was during COVID. And as soon as you could have the Salmon Festival again, as soon as the city allowed it to happen, out it came again, and 75,000 people showed up. And it's a wonderful thing. I got the blessing of being able to volunteer for the Olympics in 2010.
Oh my.
I was on the city of Richmond's protocol team. So I got to do all the protocol visits, all the VIP visits, taking people around, showing them around, introducing them, helping people get from here, there, and everywhere. And that was a lot of fun. That was 6 months or a year of my life for those 3 or 6 weeks.
So, you know what I like about you, and again, our listeners, our watchers get to hear you and I getting together. It's funny that we've known each other for so long, but these are like these little details I didn't know about you because I think so often we went to, okay, what is it we want to collaborate on? What do we want to talk about and put out in there? And I think this is so important because when I listen to you and I obviously see the energy, I know that not only do you bring that forward for your family, you
Hmm.
bring that energy and zeal to your community, but you must also bring that same energy, whether it's a client or a customer
Hmm.
or even in an organization. When you drop in to an organization, you must be that exact same person that you just want to be around. So I'm just like complimenting you. I
Oh,
love your
thank you.
energy. Yeah.
I'm one person. It doesn't matter where I am or who I'm with. I'm one person. And that one person is curious. That one person is passionate about people. I'm passionate about storytelling. I'm passionate about communication. I'm passionate about listening and understanding and growing. And whether it's with customers, whether my volunteer time, whether it's with family or friends, for the most part, you know, I'm a curious individual and I want to know. I mean, there are days like everybody else where you sit there and say, okay, I've had enough. Enough is enough. Let me just, descend into my cave and turn off the world and unplug for a little bit. But we're all like that. We all have those days where we need to unplug and we need to be by ourselves and do things. But for the most part, I like being around people and I love enabling other people to be the best that they can be.
Yeah, and anybody would be lucky to have you part of the organization or somebody just to lean on when somebody's feeling something's not quite right about the organization and I need an external view to be able to change that. So I'd love to now, if I could, just shine a light on the work that you do.
Sure.
Because, I could say, oh, he's the marketing guy, he's the communications guy. You're a lot of different guys all in one, but I would love for you, maybe if you could, for my audience, just share a little bit about what is that value that you do bring to organizations.
Well, the value is the same, but the medium has changed. As of the end of 2024, I had a company for the last 17 years called Your Brand Marketing. And Your Brand Marketing was a communications agency. We worked with mid to large size companies to help them communicate more effectively inside and outside the company, make sure that people are listened to, understood, valued, engaged with, and build champions of brands. That's what we did for the last 17 years. And I came to the conclusion probably late last year that after 5 years of COVID, it was time for me to be part of a larger organization again. I've been by myself. Yes, I've worked fractionally within companies. Yes, I have, you know, subcontractors that I bring into things. But for the most part, you're on your own. And I want to be part of something where I can have incredible national or global impact and somewhere where I can lead, coach, and mentor the next generation. And so what I did, December 31st, I decided you can't look backwards and look forwards at the same time. I burned the ship down. I literally, stacked the cordwood, set it adrift, lit the arrow, and watched it burn on December 31st. And I decided that it was time to move forward. It was time for something next. It's time. And I'm having some great conversations. Some great, great people are talking to me, but I'm not really sure what's going to be next. But I'm excited about it. I mean, the nice thing is I'm a U.S. and Canadian citizen. I can work anywhere in North America. I need to be based out of Vancouver because that's where my family is. But I'm excited about where I can go and add value to mid to large size companies to help them get from where they are to where they need to be.
And what I like about it, and this is why you and I get along so well, is that you're just, yes, communication, marketing, all of that is important, but the ultimate outcome of what we're doing is we're helping people and organizations leave their legacy, leave their mark,
Hmm.
create the stories that people can resonate with, feel good about the organization that they're with, be proud to tell others about it. I
Hmm.
mean, your work is so noble, helping people to tell the story. And I cannot wait to see who's going to come knocking on your door to say, Ben, we need to talk.
Well, and it's not just it's compelling people to engage with you and help you grow. Telling a story is a great thing.
Yeah.
Telling a story that compels people to engage and compels people towards action, that's what it's all about. And that's where I want to be is to be able to sit there and say, look, I'm not just a marketing guy, I'm not a comms guy. I'm like, how do we help you grow your company? How do we get you from 10 million to 20 million, from 50 million to 100 million, from 100 million to 250 million? I've worked on all those type of things. And it's a matter of sitting there going, how do we sit there and enable, entrepreneurs and business owners and organizations to realize their next level of dreams?
So very interesting. And again, I know a lot of CEOs, and I cannot wait for the opportunity to maybe introduce you to some of those that may be feeling the need to do something different.
Hmm.
But I know one of the things that you have been adamant about, and we've talked a lot about this, but I wanted you to share with my audience is that everybody's going through some kind of change, political change, economic
Constantly.
change, leadership changes, pandemic, all supply chain. Change is a constant. So then you feel so strongly about how effective communication, if not now, is even more critical during change. Tell me more about that.
Well, here's the thing. If you tell people that they're changing and you don't explain to them why, and you don't explain to them how it benefits them and what changing enables them to do that they can't do today, and what not the ramifications of not changing are, they won't. People will get dug in because people are scared. They're scared for their jobs, they're scared for the unknown, they're scared for the uncertain, they're scared of risk, and a variety of different things. And people need to be able to see around that corner. People need to be able to see over the hill. And unless you can be the Sherpa that helps people get over the hill and helps them down the other side, you can't just leave them at the top of the mountain. You got to help them down the other side to whatever that promised land is. You're not fulfilling the ability to enable people to want to come with you. Because a leader who just goes out for a walk by themselves is not a leader. You need to have people that are willing to follow you and want to follow you and know why they're following you before you truly are a leader.
Yeah, and before we go into the leadership topic, I'll tell a quick story about communication. And I think what you take communication a step further because it's interesting. We recently had some renovation in our home, and my husband informed my daughter and I the renovation is happening on this day. So we said, "Great, we're ready. We'll move some furniture around." Then the hammers and the saws completely disrupted our lives. We had no idea what the impact was. Canceled all my meetings. My daughter and I, it's like, we didn't know this was going to happen this way. My husband says, I communicated to you. I told you what was going to happen, who was going to show up, and what time. The breakdown was we didn't have two-way understanding. We didn't
Yes.
talk through the details. So when they had to come back and finish the work, we talked about what to expect, what you had to move, what you could and you couldn't do. Then we were ready for the change and we just
Mm-hmm.
said, okay, I'm not going to have any meetings today. I'm going to help them move around the furniture. And we got through it, but it's because we took the time to deeply communicate for understanding.
It's funny because you just opened up just a flashback in my mind. My father did commercial renovation. He was a general contractor for large businesses, renovating 40 to 60,000 square foot retail spaces. You know, thousands and thousands and thousands of different SKUs on the shelf at any given time. 15, 20 aisles of stuff, different departments, etc. That, and he would go into these renovations and says, "Look, I'm going to make a mess. Things are going to get stressful. You guys are going to get frustrated. we're going to work through this together. And he says, this is the process. This is what's happening. This is how it's happening. This is why it's happening. And this is what it's going to look like when we're done. And he didn't do this once. He did this through the entire process. As look, this is what needs to happen today. This is what needs to happen this hour. This is what needs to happen this week. This is why, and this is how we're going to get through it together. And because of that, he worked with these companies for 35 years because they trusted him. They knew what to expect from him. They knew that, yes, there was going to be chaos. Yes, there was going to be noise. Yes, there was going to be, a mess at times, but he was always going to clean it up. His people were always going to be, conscientious of the customers in the store. He was going to be able to make sure that nobody was rude to anybody.
Yes.
And that business was not disrupted as much as humanly possible.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful thing. And that's a clear example about this importance of communication through change, because then, at least for a short time, people will go through, like you say, the chaos, but then you have happy customers and a happy wife and a happy daughter. So,
which is far more important than the clean renovations.
yeah, but you started bringing up another point. So you brought in the segment of like, okay, communications through change, but you also started bringing up the element of leadership, how communication
Yeah.
is an essential leadership tool. So we're talking to you leaders out there, CEOs, presidents of companies. Let's talk about your role using communication as a leadership tool.
Well, the most famous thing that I hear over and over and over again from leaders is, I told them, why don't they understand it? I look at it this way, and this is how I explain it to leaders. On this certain corner, there's 2 billboards. Yes. You drive past it every day. Yes. Could you tell me what's on those billboards? No. But you drive past it every day. Yeah. But you can't tell me what's on those billboards. No. Well, I want you to tell me what's on those billboards. And the next day they came back and says, oh. And they had stopped and they had read the billboards and come back to me. And I said, okay, now you're aware. Think of your people the same way. They've got 1,000 other things that you were doing, just like you were driving hither, there, you were watching traffic, you were listening to the radio, you were concentrating on other meetings, et cetera, et cetera. And this billboard was trying to get your attention. Well, guess what? It never got your attention until you stopped and were intentional and paid attention to it and tried to figure out what it had to say. Your people are the same way. They've got the message that you're giving to them right now. Their attitude, if it's immediate enough, you're going to let people know it's immediate. If it's not immediate, their assumption is you'll get back to them and tell them that they have to do it again, because they've got 50 other things that they're working on that may be far more high priority than the conversation that you're trying to have with them. And it could have nothing to do with work. It could be the fact that they got yelled at by their spouse that morning, or they're having a problem with one of their kids, or their mother's sick, or they're having trouble paying the rent. There's 1,000 things that go on in people's lives. And we have to realize that the one message that we're trying to get through to them if we only tell it to them once, there's a 99% chance that most people are not going to internalize it and be able to move forward.
That leadership component is so important, and we take for granted communicating, and communication is understood. But I think the work that you do is that if we are leaders and we communicate in the right way, you can then see in the behaviors of the people and their performance and either complying or meeting the expectations, you're going to see it and feel it. And most importantly, I think your customers are going to feel it, because leaders need to communicate in a way that gets people attention and people understand it deeply, such that it impacts the behaviors and their decision logic. If you cannot establish what's important, the message, the initiative, etc., then people's decision logic on what's important, what's the priority, is going to be willy-nilly, and then you wonder why you have overtime and customers are complaining, etc. Leaders need to make a concerted effort to make sure that up, down, sideways, when they communicate and when they lead, it is understood. Otherwise, the ship's going to sink.
Oh, absolutely. And I look at it two different ways. First of all, you need to use the language of the people and the analogies of the people that you're trying to communicate to. Just because you understand it in your mind
Yeah.
doesn't mean that they understand it in their mind. And until you can sit there and say, wait a second here, did they understand this? Do I have a listening post? Do I have a way to verify that they've heard what I've had to say without micromanaging or being condescending about it? You need to find ways to be able to have that conversation in ways that people tell you back what they've heard, to be able to make sure that what they said, the game of telephone. You get 20 people in a row whispering in each other's ear. You tell the first person something, the person number 20 is going to hear something completely different, because each person brings their own bias. Each person has their own interpretation. How many people, you ask them an Elton John song, and you say, what are the true lyrics of this song? You're going to get 50 to 100 different versions of what the lyric actually is.
Yeah, I think what you talk about, and I talk about this a little bit in my work, is that leaders are so focused on results and the transaction.
Yes.
But they're ultimately should be in pursuit of peace of mind. So what are those things that keep us from having peace of mind? And if the strategy or the tactical execution is not well understood at any and all of the different ranks, really, are you focusing on the right area? And I think people don't recognize how important a communication strategy for your organization will instill health, the right behaviors, the right cultures. And again, your customers are going to leverage it and learn from it. But even more importantly, again, results oriented, bottom line, is top line revenue growth. So you had mentioned a little bit about this before, but I really want you to also then provide the linkage of how important investing in a robust communications ecosystem is to revenue growth for a company.
Okay, here's a perfect example. Mm-hmm. There was a company back east, and they went out and they bought 150 or 200,000 square feet on the West Coast. So therefore, they could have the stuff come in from Asia off the docks, cross-dock it. Half of the stuff they could actually ship out to their West Coast customers, and then the stuff that had to go back east, they shipped it back east. Perfect, no problem that way. It was a better logistics model. It worked fine. The problem was when the stuff came in from the West Coast to the East Coast, the skids had to be de-stuffed. They had to be re-skidded and re-shrink wrapped before they were put away. Why? Because the ceilings in the new facility were 8 feet higher than the ceilings on the East Coast. Therefore, the skid positions were different. So therefore, you got 5 boxes high on the West Coast, and you only got 4 boxes high on the East Coast. Well, nobody said anything to each other for 6 months. They just grumbled about it. And, they grumbled about it. And it was costing them hundreds, if not thousands, probably tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. Because there was probably 10 trucks coming in a week. 10 53-foot trucks, times, what is that, 18 or 19 skids. That's a lot. That's a lot of skids that needs to be, de-stuffed, repacked before putting away. Well, it took somebody actually going out for a tour of the new West Coast plant to look at it and went, oh. And all of a sudden it says, look, when you guys are putting the skids together for the East Coast, could you do it as 4 instead of 5? How come? Well, this is why. Oh, sure, no problem. It doesn't matter to us. That's better, because what we can do is then now we can load the 50-foot, 3-foot trucks 2 high instead of 1 high. So therefore we can get 35 or 35 skids or something like that in a truck instead of 19. So it saves us trucking fees. It saves us, skid locations. It saves us time. It saves us shrink wrap. It saves us skids. And all it came down to is not having that conversation about why are these skids coming in a way that we can't just pop them right into the skid position in the warehouse.
And so that's where your value comes in. If you're inserted into an organization and they have, a new logistics initiative, to serve their customers throughout the US, might they bring somebody again who might not be familiar with logistics? You said you'd have this innate curiosity to learn about the process and what are the ramifications, and then being able to think, okay, yeah, it's a transaction. We're moving material from A to B and what have you. But you can ask those questions and then you can think about the human element. Yeah, it goes in and out. There's a computer transaction, but humans interact with the process. You,
Exactly.
you can say then, okay, it's a change. We emailed everybody. We did a PowerPoint on it if they still use PowerPoint. But you can come into an organization and say, okay, guys, we know what the change is, but what kind of communication do we need in order to navigate that change? Give leadership them to the tools such that we can realize revenue growth or not have revenue erode because of a change. That's the worst thing that could happen in an organization. You're that guy.
Well, I try. My question is that the more intelligent questions we can ask each other, and the intelligent questions come down to sometimes it's asking the stupidly simple questions that everybody's afraid to ask. They go, well, everybody knows that. Well, no, not everybody knows that. You know that, but not everybody knows that. I mean, I look at my son right now and the stuff that he's learning in university. He assumes everybody knows what he knows. He's doing mechatronic engineering. Trust me. 90% of what he knows, his father does not know.
Yeah, such a smart kid. I'm just thinking here because when we talk about how communication is critical for revenue growth or preserving it, I just noticed in your minor rebranding, I am Ben Baker, communicating for growth.
Mm-hmm.
It fits perfectly into what we've been talking about. And for leaders out there, I know this is on your mind. You're going through change. A change maybe you're not familiar with. You've been through situations where you changed things and the organization was turned upside down. Might you consider another tool in your toolbox? How can we more effectively communicate to pull everybody forward together, minimize any disruption, and actually realize something much better than you ever expected? Ben's that guy.
You're very kind.
Well, you're a good person. I love talking to you. You guys are, we're rowing the ship the same way, hopefully not sinking. And I just really, really enjoyed our conversation. And this is not the end of our conversation. For anybody watching or anybody listening, Ben Baker, he is an amazing person. He's an amazing listener, but he's got a way of being able to take your situation and asking you those well thought out questions for a better way of communicating. But I am going to give the mic to you one last time to share any last thoughts with our audience.
Yeah, I mean, what I want to do is I want to give your audience a couple presents. If they go to imbenbaker.com, you'll find a publication page on there. There's a whole bunch of free ebooks. There's no paywall. You don't have to give me your email address. You don't have to give me your firstborn. Just download them as a PDF and use them, and hopefully they add value to you. As well, there is information about who I am, what I do, why I do it, how I can add value. And listen, if people are looking, they sit there and say, we've got 2025 goals. We have no idea how we're going to reach these, or we're concerned about reaching these. Reach out. Let's have a 30-minute conversation, and I'll give you 2 or 3 communication tactics that you can try that might put you on the right path. And I'm willing to do that. And you can book a 30-minute call with me right from my website. So go to imbenbaker.com, look around, and if I can add value, if you want to have a conversation, if there's ways you think that I can help your organization strategically get from where you are to where you want to be, let's have that conversation and see how I can add value to you.
Ben, as always, you are amazing. I am grateful that you have dropped in on the podcast, and I simply want to wish you well and continued success. And thank you so much.
Deb, thanks for sharing the mic with me today. I always appreciate you.